Lucas Marshall, a wealthy man known for his arrogance, agreed to a wager that would unexpectedly turn his world upside down. Accustomed to winning both in business and life, competition was his fuel. So when his close friend Jack issued a daring challenge at a lavish New York party, Lucas couldn't resist. With a smirk, Jack tossed out the challenge. "Let's see if you can handle this, Lucas. I bet you don't have the guts to marry a woman who isn't your usual type." Lucas, infamous for dating stunning women, was momentarily taken aback. But ever eager to prove himself, he raised an eyebrow and asked, "And what's the prize?" Jack grinned mischievously and raised his champagne glass. "$1 million to the winner. But there's a catch. You have to marry her and stay married for 6 months." The thrill of competition and the lure of the prize made Lucas agree immediately. The woman Jack had chosen was Chloe Richards, someone far from conventional standards of beauty. Lucas didn't know her, but to him, it was just another deal to win. Days later, Lucas received more information about Chloe. She was confident, independent, and strong-willed, completely unlike the women he was used to. The challenge intrigued him even more. Used to being in control, he wondered how he would handle someone who refused to bend to his will. Their first meeting happened at a high-end restaurant. When Chloe arrived, Lucas immediately noticed her difference. She wasn't intimidated by the luxurious setting or by him. Instead, she met his gaze with steady confidence. "You must be Lucas Marshall," Chloe said, taking her seat. "And you must be Chloe Richards," Lucas replied, offering a controlled smile and his hand. She hesitated briefly before shaking it with a firm grip, signaling her determination. "Let's not waste time," Chloe began bluntly. "I know why we're here. I know the terms of the bet." Lucas was surprised by her directness but kept his composure. "And yet you still agreed to meet?" he asked, curious about her motives. Chloe paused before answering. "Let's just say I have my reasons. I'm not naive. 6 months may seem short, but a lot can happen in that time. If you think you can manipulate or control me, you're mistaken." Lucas smiled. Chloe was proving to be more of a challenge than he had anticipated, which made the situation all the more interesting. As the meeting ended, Lucas found himself increasingly intrigued by her. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, fearless in his presence, which only fueled his curiosity and admiration. In the following days, Lucas couldn't stop thinking about how to approach the next stage. He was used to being the master of the game, but Chloe seemed to have her own strategies. Their second meeting took place at a simple cafe, a far cry from the glamorous restaurants Lucas preferred. Chloe had suggested it, and his curiosity made him agree. He wanted to understand her and why she had accepted what seemed like a temporary marriage. When Lucas arrived, Chloe was already there, calmly sipping tea with a gentle smile. Her warmth was a contrast to the first meeting, yet she still carried the same unshakable confidence. "I thought you preferred 5-star restaurants," she teased as he sat down. "Sometimes it's good to break the routine," Lucas replied, trying to sound casual, though he felt slightly out of his element. They talked for a while, exchanging light details, but Chloe quickly got to the point. "If we're really doing this, I want to make a few things clear," she said, placing her cup on the table. "I'm not interested in your money or your luxurious lifestyle. 6 months is 6 months, and I plan to leave this arrangement just as I entered it." Lucas studied her carefully. She was honest and self-assured, a woman who knew what she wanted. Marriage wasn't a stepping stone for her. "And what do you want, Chloe?" Lucas asked, genuinely curious. "Freedom," she answered without hesitation. "Even though we're entering this agreement, I won't be controlled. I have my own life, and that won't change because of a temporary marriage." Lucas smiled. It wasn't the answer he expected, but he didn't mind granting her independence. To him, marriage was merely a formality for the bet. If she wished to remain free, it didn't bother him. "Fine," he agreed. 6 months, and then we go our separate ways." Chloe studied him for a moment, making sure he truly accepted her terms. She had taken on this challenge with a plan and was determined to ensure it played out on her terms. Deep down, she knew Lucas might attempt to manipulate the situation, but she trusted her own strength to resist. Their meeting ended amicably, with roles clearly defined. Chloe would maintain her independence, and Lucas would treat the marriage as a formality. As the wedding day approached, Lucas realized this game might not be as simple as he imagined. The wedding itself was cold and unceremonious, more like a carefully executed business contract than a celebration of love. Lucas Marshall, confident in his strategic mind, was already picturing himself as the victor of the bet. He was convinced that the 6 months would pass in a flash, and that Chloe, no matter how stubborn, would eventually succumb to the luxurious lifestyle he planned to offer. Right after the ceremony, Lucas escorted Chloe to his massive penthouse in the heart of New York, a towering symbol of his wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the city lights, and the interior was adorned with the most exclusive and expensive decor. To Lucas, this was the real battlefield, the arena where he would conquer Chloe through the sheer power of his material world. But from the very first moment, Chloe made it clear she wasn't about to yield. Upon stepping into the penthouse, she kept a distant, composed demeanor. The look she shot Lucas wasn't one of admiration, it was defiance. 6 months. Not a day more, she said firmly, moving to one of the enormous windows and surveying the city without the slightest impression of the luxury surrounding her. Lucas smiled confidently. He was used to initial resistance. Every woman in his life had eventually surrendered to his charm and wealth. Chloe, he thought, would be no different. In the first few days after the wedding, Lucas tried everything to impress her. He showered her with jewelry, designer clothes, and extravagant trips, expecting her to gradually adapt to the lifestyle he dictated. But to his mounting frustration, she refused everything. Chloe insisted on maintaining her simple, modest routines, never yielding to the allure of his wealth. "I don't need any of this, Lucas," she would say calmly, each word cutting deeper into his sense of control. It bothered him more than he expected. Lucas, accustomed to always getting what he wanted, had never had his authority challenged. What had begun as a bet was rapidly becoming personal. He had to win Chloe over, to assert that he was ultimately in control. He escalated his tactics. He tried to prevent her from going to work, offering excuses like, "You don't need a paycheck anymore, your role as my wife is enough." When Chloe insisted, he made her wait hours for meetings she considered important. He manipulated schedules and orchestrated situations to maintain control. Yet Chloe remained steadfast, an unmovable force against his attempts. Her resistance only fueled his desire to dominate her. Their interactions began to feel like walking through a minefield. Small provocations surfaced in trivial conversations, but Chloe, with her sharp words, diffused every attempt Lucas made to make her feel inferior or controlled. One particularly tense night, Lucas tried a different approach, emotional rather than material. "I don't understand you, Chloe," he admitted, frustration and curiosity mixing in his gaze. "Any other woman would be thrilled with this life of luxury, yet you act like it's not enough. What is it that you really want?" Chloe, who had remained impassive until now, finally lifted her eyes. They shone with an intensity that caught Lucas off guard. "What I want," she said, "is respect, Lucas. I'm not a piece on your chessboard. You think you can control me with money, but you're wrong. Money doesn't buy dignity or integrity. You may have all these things around you, but inside, you're empty, and that's what you can't stand." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. For the first time, Lucas felt he might be losing more than control. Chloe wasn't just resisting him, she was dismantling the carefully constructed facade he had spent years building. That scared him. No one had ever challenged him like this, and the fact that Chloe saw beyond his wealth made him feel exposed. Instead of retreating, Lucas tightened his grip. He began isolating Chloe, attempting to make her dependent on him. He cut off contacts, closed doors that could advance her career, and even sabotaged events she was organizing. Yet Chloe refused to be intimidated. With every blow, she stood taller, her resolve unwavering. She held fast to her dignity, refusing to be molded by Lucas's control. Then, one night, she revealed her own strategy. "You think you're in control, don't you?" she said, deliberate and calm. "But what you don't know is that I have a plan too. And when the time comes, you'll see this whole game is built on something far bigger than you ever imagined." Lucas stared, genuinely surprised. For the first time, he realized he might have underestimated her. A rare fear crept in, the possibility that he might not emerge as the winner of this game. Weeks stretched on, tense and taut, each day feeling like a rope ready to snap. Lucas, obsessed with control, tried every trick to manipulate the situation, but Chloe's resistance never wavered. She was a fortress he could not breach. Chloe looked at him with a serene yet attentive expression. "Of course," she replied, as if she'd been expecting this moment. Lucas took a seat across from her, searching for the right words. The tension between them was thick, impossible to ignore. He knew he could no longer treat this marriage as a mere formality. Something had shifted, and he had to confront it head-on. "What are we doing here, Chloe?" he asked, his voice carrying a sincerity that even surprised him. "This started as a game, a bet. But now, I don't know what to think anymore." Chloe studied him silently for a few moments before replying. "I'm not playing, Lucas. I never was." Her voice was calm but carried weight. "From the beginning, I agreed to this marriage for reasons far beyond you. I don't care about the money or your control. I'm here for something bigger. And if you haven't realized that by now, maybe it's time you opened your eyes." A tightness gripped Lucas's chest, as if she had revealed a secret he was yet to understand. Frustration rose in him. "I know you have your secrets, Chloe. But what irritates me most is that the more I try to understand you, the more I realize I'm not in control, and I hate that." He suddenly stood, unable to remain seated, as if the weight of his revelation was too much to bear. Chloe remained composed, her gaze fixed on him. She rose slowly and walked toward him, stopping just inches away. Lucas's heart pounded. "Lucas," she began, her voice low and soft, "this isn't about control. You've always lived trying to dominate everything and everyone. But with me, you'll have to learn that control isn't always the answer. Sometimes things just need to be what they are." He met her gaze, and for a moment, something shifted. He felt a connection unlike anything before. For the first time, he truly saw Chloe, not as a piece in his game, but as the person she really was. "So, what do you want?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Chloe smiled, a mysterious, almost chilling smile. "I want you to figure that out for yourself." With that, she walked away, leaving him alone with his swirling thoughts. In the days that followed, the distance between them grew, yet paradoxically, Lucas felt closer to Chloe than ever. He became obsessed with uncovering what she was hiding, desperate to understand her true intentions. At the same time, he felt increasingly powerless over himself. He couldn't admit it, but Chloe was changing his perspective on the world, and the thought terrified him. The 6 months of marriage were nearly up, yet each day dragged on like an eternity. Sleep eluded him, and the looming revelation he felt approaching twisted his stomach. Chloe had become an enigmatic force in his life. She wasn't just the woman he'd married on a bet. She was someone who seemed to hold knowledge he could not grasp. Lucas threw everything at uncovering her secret. He hired detectives, investigated her past, and followed every lead, yet every clue appeared orchestrated, controlled by Chloe herself. It was as though she had been 2 steps ahead from the very start. One night, after a late business meeting, Lucas returned to the penthouse. The balcony light glowed, and there was Chloe, perched like a queen surveying her empire, gazing out over New York. He sensed that tonight, the truth would finally surface. Yet fear gripped him. What if the revelation was more than he could bear? He stepped closer, his footsteps echoing softly in the quiet apartment. Chloe didn't turn immediately. The silence was heavy, as if both sensed the storm about to break. "I need answers, Chloe," Lucas said, his voice firm though his heart raced. "I can't play this game anymore. You have to tell me the truth." Chloe exhaled slowly and rose from her chair. Her eyes, usually calm and calculating, now burned with an emotion he couldn't decipher. There was something new in her gaze, dark, fierce, and unyielding. "The truth, Lucas?" she asked, a bitter smile playing on her lips. "Do you really want it?" He nodded without hesitation. The tension in the room tightened with every second. "You have no idea who I am," she began, her voice icy and precise. "You've always seen people as pawns on your chessboard. But this time, Lucas, you were the pawn. I've been playing this game from the start." A chill ran down his spine. The certainty he had always carried, the belief that he was in control, was crumbling before her. He tried to speak, but Chloe cut him off. "Do you remember the name Richards?" she asked, her tone sharpening. Of course, he didn't. People like him never remembered. My father owned a small company, one that struggled to survive, until you came along. Lucas staggered back, his eyes wide, his mind racing as he struggled to piece together her words. What are you talking about?" he stammered, confusion and disbelief lacing his voice. Chloe stepped toward him, her eyes ablaze with pain and anger. "My father, Lucas. He was an honest man, working tirelessly to support our family. And then you came along. You took everything from him. You ruined him." Her voice broke for a moment, tears welling in her eyes, before she continued. "He lost everything, and it drove him to take his own life. My father killed himself because of your empire, because of your ruthless pursuit of success." The impact of her words hit Lucas like a blow to the gut. He froze as memories flooded back, countless deals, contracts, the lives affected by his relentless ambition. He couldn't remember every business he had crushed to rise to the top, but now the weight of it all came crashing down. I, Lucas tried to interrupt, desperate to defend himself, but Chloe raised her hand, stopping him. "No!" she shouted, anger boiling over. "You have no idea what you've done. This isn't just about money, Lucas. It's about lives destroyed. You took my father, the only person I had in the world, and while you thrived, my mother and I sank into debt and despair. We barely had anything to eat, and you lived in luxury." Lucas was speechless. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, but no words would come. All he could do was stand there, the crushing weight of guilt pressing down on him. "But I planned everything," Chloe continued, her tone now calmer, though still laced with resentment. "When I learned about your bet, I saw my chance. I approached you deliberately. I accepted the bet so you would feel, just a fraction, of what I felt. I wanted you to know what it's like to be played, manipulated, and powerless." Lucas felt his body tremble. He had always believed he was in control, always certain he would emerge victorious. But now, the tables had turned. He was the target, and Chloe was the player, orchestrating the game from the start. I didn't know. I didn't know," Lucas began, his voice weak. Chloe stepped closer, standing face to face with him. "You never knew because you never cared," she said, her voice cold and cutting. "You destroyed lives without a second thought. And now, I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to make sure you never forget what you've done. You will feel the pain you caused, and that pain, Lucas, will haunt you for the rest of your life." Her words fell over him like a thunderclap. Lucas, for the first time, faced the real consequences of his actions. The weight of guilt crushed him. He realized he had lost far more than a bet. He had lost something irretrievable. Chloe stepped away, the silence in the penthouse stretching like a heavy shroud. Lucas felt his legs give way, and he collapsed onto the couch, speechless. Emptiness consumed him, leaving nothing but the echo of her words. Chloe's revelation tore through the world he thought he knew. The woman he had seen as a pawn, someone to manipulate and control, had flipped the entire game. For the first time, Lucas was truly out of control. But Chloe didn't give him time to process. After revealing the devastation she had endured, the destruction of her family and her father's death, she left him alone in the penthouse, abandoned to his guilt. Lucas remained frozen, the air suffocating around him as if the walls themselves were collapsing. He wanted to speak, to apologize, to make sense of the inexplicable, but no words came. How could he justify such cruelty, such pain? In the days that followed, Chloe did exactly what Lucas feared most. She ignored him. Her presence was a constant, silent reminder of his failure. She moved past him as if he were invisible, as if his existence were nothing more than a shadow. At breakfast, she sat in silence, barely lifting her eyes. When he tried to speak, his words died in the air, unable to penetrate the barrier she had erected between them. Lucas, used to commanding attention and dominating every room, found himself powerless, even in his own home. Chloe continued her daily affairs, speaking to staff and managing her life, but with Lucas, she remained untouchable. Lucas felt invisible, as if he didn't exist at all. The weight of this deliberate silence was slowly dismantling the man he thought he was. One morning, as Chloe prepared to leave, he tried to break through. "Chloe, we need to talk," he called out. She stopped, adjusting her coat, but didn't face him. The silence between them thickened, pressing on him. Any reaction, even anger, would have been better than her indifferent retreat, but she said nothing. She simply walked out, gently closing the door, leaving Lucas with nothing but the echo reverberating in his mind. The pain of being ignored by someone he had begun to see as more than an adversary was a new experience for Lucas. He, who was used to controlling situations and winning, was now being manipulated, punished by silence and disdain. Each time she left him standing alone, his sense of powerlessness grew, and that was only the beginning. Chloe didn't stop at silence. She began actively undermining his confidence in subtle, cutting ways. At work, important meetings were rescheduled without notice, his decisions were questioned, and projects he had initiated mysteriously failed. He knew it was Chloe, even though she never admitted it. It felt as though invisible strings controlled every aspect of his life, and she was pulling them all. At home, things worsened. Chloe took on a stance of absolute disdain, deliberately distancing herself from any attempt at reconciliation. She no longer sat with him at meals, avoided conversation beyond the superficial, and whenever he tried to follow her to bridge the gap, she responded with cold, piercing looks, as if his presence were a nuisance. One night, Lucas found her in the living room, reading a book. The scene looked peaceful, but he knew it was a silent trap. He sat down, attempting once more to reach her. "Chloe," he began, his voice low, almost pleading, "I know I've done horrible things. I know I've caused you so much pain. But please, can we try to work this out? Can we at least talk?" Slowly, she closed the book, still refusing to meet his eyes. When she finally raised them, the coldness in her face made him shiver. "Talk," she repeated, bitterly laughing. "Do you think there's anything left to say? After everything you've done, words are meaningless." "I was wrong, Chloe." "I know that," Lucas insisted, rising from the couch and moving closer, desperate for even a sliver of connection. "I would do anything to fix it. I can change, I swear." Her piercing gaze met his, challenging every word. "Change," she said slowly, standing. "Do you think changing now can erase everything? Will it bring my father back? Will it fix the years of misery your actions caused? No, Lucas, it won't." She stepped closer, and Lucas felt the weight of her stare crush him. "What you do now isn't for me. It's for you. You'll carry this guilt for the rest of your life." For the first time, Lucas realized there would be no easy redemption, no instant forgiveness. He wanted to fight for something that could be fixed, but Chloe was beyond repair. In the days that followed, she intensified her punishments. Every look of disdain, every cold response, reminded him of his failures. Lucas tried everything to prove he was changing, that he could be better, but every effort was met with indifference or subtle sarcasm. One night, after a disastrous work meeting where a critical project had been sabotaged, Lucas came home to find Chloe laughing on the phone. Fragments of her conversation revealed she was discussing his decisions at work. She was subtly dismantling everything he had built, but in a way no one else would notice, forcing him to suffer in silence. When she hung up, Lucas confronted her in the living room, exhaustion and suppressed anger etched on his face. "You're tearing everything apart, aren't you?" he said, his voice low, but frustration clear. "At work, here, you're destroying my life." Chloe crossed her arms, expression impassive. "Destroying your life?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "I'm just giving back what you gave me. Don't worry, Lucas, I won't ruin you financially. That would be too simple. I want you to live with the pain. I want you to feel every loss, every failure, just as I did. I want you to watch everything you built crumble, and know it's your fault." Lucas felt the floor fall out beneath him. This was a nightmare he had never imagined. Always the winner, always the one in control, he was now the target of a cold, calculated revenge. Chloe wasn't destroying him all at once. She wanted him to suffer day by day, with each small defeat, each look of disdain, until nothing remained but regret. Weeks passed. Chloe continued her silent punishments. Lucas, once arrogant and confident, now wandered the house like a shadow of his former self, grasping for a forgiveness he knew would never come. Lucas tried to redeem himself, but every effort felt inadequate. He was caught in a relentless cycle of guilt and pain, a cycle orchestrated perfectly by Chloe. Yet the worst was still to come. One night, she finally confronted him with a coldness he had never encountered. She approached as he sat on the couch, exhausted and broken, and spoke words that would haunt him forever. "Lucas," she began, her voice calm but sharp, "you took something from me that I can never get back. Now, I'm returning the favor, and you will live with that for the rest of your life." With that, she left him, saying no more. The punishment was already in motion, and Lucas knew he would never be the same. He felt trapped in a maze of guilt and despair. Chloe had succeeded in putting him in a position he had never known, completely out of control. The weeks after her revelation were unbearable. Lucas, once confident and arrogant, now moved through the house like a shadow of himself. Each attempt to speak with Chloe met with cold stares, indifference, or outright rejection. Her silence gnawed at him, leaving him sleepless, obsessively trying to repair the damage of his past, though the weight of the truth made it feel impossible. But slowly, something inside him shifted. He realized words alone no longer mattered. Apologies were meaningless. Chloe needed to see real, tangible change, actions, not promises. And he was determined to prove it. One morning, Lucas woke with a resolve he hadn't felt in months. He wouldn't ask for forgiveness. He would show it. First, he would give her space, respecting her need for distance while demonstrating his presence in subtle, meaningful ways. He began observing Chloe's routines, noting the small things that mattered to her. The smell of her coffee, always strong with no sugar, her fondness for peonies, the way she liked to move through her day. What had once seemed trivial now became the blueprint for his attempt at reconnection. That afternoon, he visited one of the city's best flower shops and bought a bouquet of peonies. He didn't give them to her directly, knowing she would reject them immediately. Instead, he left them on the kitchen table without a note. Simple, silent, meaningful. When Chloe returned from a walk, she found the flowers. Lucas watched from the corner of his eye as she paused, picked one, and inhaled its scent. Her expression remained neutral, but that tiny gesture told him she hadn't dismissed them outright. It was progress. In the days that followed, he maintained these small, thoughtful gestures, making her coffee just the way she liked it, arranging breakfast, leaving little things within her reach, but never forcing conversation or presence. Slowly, he was showing that he had changed, that he cared. Chloe, however, remained guarded. The walls were still up, and Lucas knew breaking through them would take patience. On a particularly cold evening, he found her on the balcony wrapped in a blanket, gazing at the city lights. After a pause, he approached and handed her a cup of hot tea. "Here. I thought you might like something warm," he said gently, keeping his distance. She didn't respond immediately but accepted the cup, eyes still on the horizon. Lucas stood beside her, silent, simply present. For the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel unbearable. Something subtle was shifting. "Why are you doing this, Lucas?" Chloe finally asked, her voice soft but firm. He drew a deep breath, careful with his words. "Because I realized that talking doesn't mean anything anymore. Words don't fix the past. Apologies won't undo what I've done. But I want to show you that I'm changing. I want to be a better person, not just for you, but because I need to be." Chloe stayed quiet for a few moments, still holding the tea. The wind blew around them, but the tension seemed to ease slightly. "You can't change the past," she said finally, her voice softer than he expected. "I know," he replied sincerely. "But I can change the future." For the first time that night, Lucas saw something different in her eyes. The hardness remained, but there was a flicker of curiosity. She wasn't ready to forgive him completely, but he had reached a pivotal moment. He had touched on a possibility she might be willing to explore. In the following days, Lucas continued his small gestures. There was a new energy between them. Chloe still kept her distance but accepted the flowers, the tea, and even brief conversation at breakfast. The walls were beginning to come down, slowly, carefully. The real test came one evening. Lucas was preparing for a business meeting when Chloe entered the room unexpectedly. "Can you cancel your meeting?" she asked, her tone unreadable. Lucas froze, surprised. She had never shown interest in his schedule since their relationship fell apart. After a moment, he nodded and canceled it without hesitation. It was the first time in weeks she had shown willingness to spend time with him, and he wasn't about to waste it. They sat together on the couch, some distance between them, but for the first time, the silence didn't feel oppressive. Chloe seemed contemplative, processing months of tension. "I'm not ready to fully forgive you," she said finally. "But I see you're trying. Maybe that's the beginning." Lucas's heart raced. He knew he couldn't rush her, but her words ignited hope. The path ahead was long, but he was willing to walk every step if it meant earning her forgiveness, and perhaps, one day, her love. That night, they spoke quietly about trivial matters. For Lucas, it was a victory. Slowly, he was rebuilding a connection. Chloe was no longer untouchable, she was letting her guard down, but he knew better than to underestimate her. Still, a shadow lingered. Lucas sensed she was keeping something back, something she hadn't revealed. He didn't know what it was yet, but he was determined to be ready when the time came. He looked into her eyes, waiting for any sign of her reaction. "Please," he whispered, "if there's something you're still holding back, I need to know." Chloe, sitting on the couch with her hands folded in her lap, took a deep breath, initially avoiding his gaze. The silence that followed was agonizing, but Lucas knew he had to be patient. Forcing anything now could undo all the progress he had made. Finally, she looked at him. Her eyes reflected a mix of pain and resolve. "You're right, Lucas," she said, her voice soft but heavy with emotion. "I've been holding something back, something I didn't think I could tell you until now. But maybe it's time." Lucas felt the air tighten around him. Whatever she was about to say, he knew it would change everything. He leaned forward, both eager and apprehensive. "Do you remember the company you destroyed? The one my father managed?" Chloe began, her tone firm but pained. "I told you it ruined our family, and that's true, but that's not all." Lucas blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Chloe lowered her eyes, fighting back tears. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I was pregnant, Lucas. At the time, when everything happened, when we lost everything, when my father was gone, the pressure and stress. I lost the baby." The words hit Lucas like a crushing weight. He blinked, barely able to breathe, trying to process what he had just heard. The guilt he had carried for weeks now multiplied tenfold. He hadn't just destroyed a company or a family, he had destroyed a life. "Chloe," he tried to speak, voice choked. I never could have imagined." Chloe finally looked at him, tears streaming down her cheeks, but her strength was undeniable. "No, you didn't know," she said, her voice heavy with hurt. "Because you never cared to know. You destroyed lives, Lucas, and never looked at the people in your way. I lost my baby, and you went on with your life as if nothing happened." Her words cut through him like knives. He wanted to fix it, to say something that could erase the pain, but he knew nothing could. I don't have the words," Lucas finally admitted, voice weak and full of despair. "I know what I did is unforgivable. I'll never forgive myself. But please, Chloe, I would do anything to try and make this right. Anything." Chloe watched him, silent for a long moment. Then she took a deep breath and opened her eyes, revealing a subtle change. The pain remained, but there was something else, something Lucas couldn't yet name. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Lucas," she said honestly. "What happened was devastating. But I see that you're trying. Maybe there's a chance that one day I can move forward. But it won't be easy. It won't be quick." Lucas nodded, a mix of hope and despair swirling inside him. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said, determined. "No matter how long it takes, I'll prove I've changed. I can be someone you trust. Someone you can, maybe one day, forgive." Chloe gave a small, tentative smile. "We'll see," she said softly. The silence that followed was heavy but filled with possibility. Chloe stood, walking to the door, leaving Lucas alone, but this time he didn't feel despair. There was hope. In the days that followed, Lucas dedicated himself to change. Every word Chloe had spoken weighed on him, and instead of sinking into regret, he let it fuel his transformation. He wasn't just trying to win her love, he wanted to become a man worthy of her respect, and of the lives he had affected in his ruthless rise. He began visiting families whose lives he had destroyed, apologizing sincerely, offering help, and supporting them in rebuilding what had been lost. Slowly, he worked to undo the harm caused by his ambition. Chloe observed from a distance, cautious but noticing his genuine effort. Over time, she felt renewed respect and admiration for the man he was becoming. One evening, she stood on the balcony watching the city lights. Lucas approached quietly, returning from another reconciliation visit. "How was it today, Chloe?" she asked. "Hard," he admitted, sighing deeply. "But necessary. Every conversation, every apology, it's a step toward being a better person. Not just for you, but for me too." Chloe turned to him. The hardness that had always been there seemed to soften. "I can see that, Lucas," she said gently. "And I want you to know I'm ready to try. Maybe it's time we leave the past behind and build something new." Relief washed over him. Chloe was willing to give them a chance, not as a couple bound by a bet, but as two people ready to start over. As the 6-month marriage agreement came to an end, they grew closer. Their conversations became lighter, their laughter genuine. Slowly, love began to bloom in a way neither had expected. One night, Lucas prepared a special dinner. Nervously, he spoke his heart. "Chloe, our agreement is almost over. But I don't want this to end. I've fallen in love with you, truly. I want us to continue, as a real couple, no bets, no games." Chloe's heart warmed. "I love you too, Lucas," she said softly. "I want to try. But this time, as equals. As a real couple." Months later, Chloe discovered she was pregnant. The joy that followed was pure and unrestrained. They embraced, laughing and crying at the same time, grateful for the life and love they had rebuilt. "I want to do this right," Lucas said, holding her close. "I want to marry you again. Not because of a bet. Not for anything but love." "I want that too," Chloe replied, tears of happiness mingling with his. Their second wedding was intimate, filled with love and sincerity, free from bets or obligations. Just Lucas, Chloe, and the hope of their future. As they danced slowly at the end of the ceremony, Chloe rested her head on Lucas's chest. "Who would have thought it all started with a bet?" she whispered. Lucas smiled, holding her close. "Who would have thought it'd be the best bet I ever made?" With love, redemption, and hope guiding them, they were ready for the next chapter of their lives.